Hello everybody, this is Pete Stanford, VK4GXC, with another receiver, this time a Watkins Johnson for UHF receiver. This type is a WJ8617B, this is the S1-6 variant. Covers 50 to 500 megahertz in its standard form, and was augmented by quite a few different variations. Originally conceived late 1970s and was manufactured through to I think the early 90s. It's a particularly nice VUHF receiver that I have accrued over the years. I've had an 8718 before, which didn't have many of the features this particular unit has. When a couple of units came up recently here, I jumped at the chance because they did have a lot of the features which I wanted to experiment with and take a look at. And two units turned up several weeks ago, both obviously non-functioning, but stored for some length of time. I believe they're ex-services, and both non-functioning. And one of the major issues with this type of receiver, certainly from this vintage, is what I've alluded to in the past, being the tantalum capacitors that we used at the time. And I do suspect that they were, for their size, very compact microfarad values. But I even think that they pushed the limit there on specifying what voltage ratings they were for their particular size. You don't find the same voltage rating tantalums that you had in the 1970s and in the 2018s. So for anybody who's contemplating resurrecting one of these receivers, I may suggest that you should get prepared with a few variations of tantalum capacitors. I suspect there were some 6 to 8 capacitors in this unit alone which had gone short. Most of them on the power supply decoupling, some of them embedded in the synthesizer. Now the receiver itself is a microprocessor controlled receiver, as were most of this vintage, and it uses a 6809 Motorola processor card internally, with fundamentally a digital front panel, which allows you to select various features and functions. It then relays that to the microprocessor card, who then interfaces into the synthesizer through one card internally, and to the rest of the receiver through another card. They call it the receiver interface card. The receiver itself has been well constructed, well designed and well thought out. It's a card system. There's multiple cards in the receiver, which all line up internally, and the receiver itself is broken down into modularity of area and functionality. So in one area you'll find there's the synthesizer, then there's the processing system, the main RF processing equipment, and the power supply monitor over here. And they also split up the power supplies into lots of different regions. It's interesting to chase down where they are internally. Some are on the underside, some are on the back panel, some are on the boards. And they went through a lot of effort, I think, to try and screen or at least smooth off each subsection from the other by having various regulation systems in place. I particularly like this receiver. It's a lot of bang for your buck. They go for 500 to 2,000 depending on condition and fitments. This one, say, was quite heavily loaded. It has a single sideband in here. It has a lot of the nice lower bandwidths you tend to search for. The byte system is all a feature of this unit. There are scan features on this which I like. So it's well loaded, but it's not completely loaded. There is a few other features which you can receive. You can purchase and fit. This is probably one of the later ones, mid to late generation, and it's probably one of the better ones to get if you want to plug and play with the unit. As mentioned, the basic platform is 20 to 500 megahertz, and you can augment that up to 1100 megahertz by the fitment of a converting system at the front end. So you can tune then 20 to 1100 megahertz. Later they pushed that up to 1200, and they even had a HF and even VLF solution for this receiver, but you have to compromise and trade off. You can't have the UHF converter system if you've got the VLF fitted or the HF fitted. And also bear in mind that the intercept performance of it is very good for a VHF receiver, but is only adequate for a HF receiver. And bear in mind, you'd also need some decent pre-selection. All that said, it's an incredibly spectacular receiver. If you can get one and it's working, by all means, good luck to you. Keep it clean, tidy and dry, and you may get many years of use out of it. Just watch out for those capacitors. The indicators usually are, you know, the burning smell, the power supply loads up on one rail, and the unit will just not fire up. The microprocessor itself monitors so much internally and has a number of request lines, interrupt request lines, that just lock the thing up should anything go wrong. It looks worse than it actually is, I think, and when you first get these to switch on and nothing happens, it's a bit of a downer. Then you start probing around and you find out there's, you know, a cap holding something down, and that you replace that, you get it going again, and something else is holding it down, and then you get it going again, and then you can't, you know, adjust the frequencies, and then you get it going again, and so it can be a bit of a nightmare. I think fortunately I've been involved in this game for long enough to figure out what's going on some of the time, not all the time, and get these things up and running again. And it is a work of art. Certainly won't see anything like this again. It doesn't have the internal craftsmanship that some of the earlier WJs have, but it has a certain feel and solidity that I do like. So without that, I'll keep going through the receiver and explaining a bit more about the features you have on the unit. As you can probably see on the left hand side, it's heavily dominated by a spectral monitor, which is centered on the IF passband and gives approximately 4 megahertz of span, so you can have a look what's going on, plus or minus where you're monitoring. Again, it has all the usual features of focusing and gain, and then you can actually alter the sweep width. You can zoom in on certain channels. Below that is a phone's output. There's an audio gain and an RF gain, so you can switch it to manual gain and adjust for IF control if you do find you're getting overloaded. There's a form of what they call carrier relay, which is a squelch system, so it's muted unless it goes above a certain C to R and sort of noise ratio. And in this case, for instance, we are listening to this is the local air traffic control temperature and weather station, and we can increase this. In fact, if you're off tune, I can probably, with nothing being picked up, we can increase the threshold until it switches off, and of course, if we then go back to where the signal is, it'll come on, and that's a sort of fundamentally it's a squelch feature, but it allows some configurability of being able to switch on and off tape recorders and set a precise signal to noise level to enable the receiver to come through. Back to the right of it here is the actual dBm level off excuse me, off air, which is quite interesting. It's reasonably accurate to within plus or minus 4 dB, I understand. I haven't actually aligned this one up to some extent, but it does seem to perform within reasonable limits. To the right here is a memory station where you can save memories. We can, for instance, store this particular frequency, and it's already incremented by 1. We can go to another frequency. I don't know, let's go there, shall we say, and we can store that frequency, and it increments up again. So in channel 0 and 1 we've had these two frequencies, and if you wanted to recall them, you'll go back to channel 0, for instance, and you go recall. It will tell you what's in that buffer, and you then execute it, and you go to that particular frequency. Now, mainly for remote control purposes, it was often very neat to have a number of pre-programmed frequencies that perhaps you could tune around. Frequency selection is done by selecting 1 megahertz, 10 kilohertz, so decades of selection, and then it will adjust. It will adjust within that region and not the other. So you go coarse, medium, and fine, fundamentally adjusting. There is another methodology you can use to tune these, and you adjust a dip switch inside. It will allow you to highlight the actual I can put it, the parameter, the hundreds, tens, thousands, units. I usually highlight it and adjust only that one, which is a little bit fiddly. I kind of like the default setting, which is quite neat. Let me just turn that down a little bit. There is 2 antenna inputs, and you can select between the two. So you can currently on antenna 1. So if you go to antenna 2, you obviously hear that it's gone. You can potentially have 2 antennas at 2 different set frequencies, and select between the two. There's even an auto select feature which allows you to set at a certain frequency when tuning through. It automatically switches over from one to the other. So in this particular set, as mentioned, there's 5 IF bandwidths, 10, 20, 50, 300, and then 4 megahertz. And I think that's probably about the best array of bandwidths I've seen with these sets come in. It gives you very good, for my purpose anyway, arrangement of what you want to hear, of what you want to see. In this particular one, the modes are AM, FM, CW, and it is true CW. It is a proper CW. It'll bring in a BFO, and you can preset the BFO to anything. You can go here, offset to whatever you want. So it'll allow you to perhaps work out beat frequencies for certain signals you're trying to work out whether the true frequency is. There's a pulse mode, which is that basically affects the AGC and allows fast-acting detection. And then there's an SSB mode, and it will go into SSB, and you can hear the usual SSB. And this is on lower sideband at the moment, and upper sideband also. You can just about make it as AM, and it's pretty much on channel. Lower sideband, upper sideband. Okay, we'll go back to AM because it's what it's supposed to be. So that's the modes, and to the right of all this selection are the memories and control features for scanning and saving and passing off to the remote receivers. The idea is you can have a number of these as masters and slaves, and one can be a master receiver. If I ever got the second one running, I'd be interested to try that master-slave configuration and how it actually functions in that fashion. So that's fundamentally the operation. I'll give a bit of a quick tune around. As you can see, we're currently listening to the weather from Brisbane, and on the screen we can see, just turn the gain down a little bit, we can see the carrier we're tuned to here, and as we move around, that will shift left or right depending where we are, as you can see there. Now obviously because there's very little air traffic around at the moment, we probably won't see too much, but I will give it a quick tune, as there is something up here. I don't know what that is. Might not be anything at all. It's an outside birdie. Yeah, I think it is. Let's go back down, see if we can find anybody else talking. There's someone there, I think that's quick enough. No. No, once again it's just a birdie. Okay. It can be a bit fiddly to adjust this to get to the right area. I will come a bit further up. Let's see, there's someone there. Now there is an AFC function which allows you to lock on to the carrier, but it drifts obviously once it's the AGC is a little bit out on this unit. I have to get in there and adjust that.
We're established outbound 220 degrees, passing through 6,500 for flight level 280, downward 46.
WJ8617B identified. You're cleared to Wagga by a 10-watt flight plan route. Climb to flight level 200.
The Wagga via 10-watt flight plan route, flight level 200, Wagga 669.
Okay, well we'll move on from there and just go a bit further up in frequency, see what else we can actually see. Let's go up to, we'll go up through the weather satellites, which are around 137. It's a bit dark outside, so we're probably not going to get anything there. I'm just turn the gain down a bit. And we'll keep going up. Maybe there'll be someone on 2 meters. Maybe. There's someone there. Oh, gone. Not the way. So I'll fill it with on there. That can be, you can always be chasing your tail with these. There's some there. That's off the band. It's a shame. It does have very good FM reproduction. I'll keep going further north. So his level's minus 66 dBm at this site. I fundamentally got a low noise amplifier outside driving the receiver. The stock noise figure of the WJs have never been too much to shout about. Typically that's supposed to be 9 dB, can be as well as 11. And I suspect that they've always been intended to operate with some form of line amplifier or low noise amplifier at the antenna head. And that is indeed how I run this one. And I get some very, very good performance figures. I can monitor, you know, the Gold Coast ATAC, which is nearly 100 kilometers away from just a small whip in the back garden. So it's very good in a lot of ways, but it does need a little bit of help around the front end. Well, we'll just keep going up in frequency, see what else we can see. I believe there's some community radio here somewhere. Let's see if we can find that.
Việt Nam vào đây được biết là sẽ bay 2 chuyến bay thẳng tới Hoa Kỳ để đưa những người là công dân của Hoa Kỳ về nước.
So it sounds like it's Vietnamese.
Các chuyến bay quốc tế nhằm
some sort of Orthodox church work going on there. These are local, I think, redistributed channels, obviously outside the FM broadcast band. We'll keep going. Further north. No. In fact, as I say, I think 10 kilohertz isn't quite fast enough, and 1 meg is too fast. It's it would be nice to be somewhere in between. There's the maritime band, and I thought we may have seen something there, but I don't see it. This will just be digital. Yeah, pages and the like. And what you will see is the TV VHF TV comes through. You see the 3 channels very clearly, and they're off. Then you've got the intermediate band there where the DAB is being transmitted, and then you're into the next stage of TV. And we'll keep going up. Not sure if we're going to hear anything else up here. We're getting close to the sat band, but I don't really have a decent enough antenna up there for that. I will try and reduce this. I will narrow that. Let's just see if we can hear anything. Nothing. A lot of it's spread spectrum these days, so you won't hear some, but there are a couple of beacons. Nothing. Okay. And then we enter the VUHF, police, taxi, utilities. As you see, all the carriers are on the band, and again, the sweep width, you can probably see how you can zoom in on various signals and have a look at them. All the way through. And at the top end of this particular band is some CB, but it's a bit rough and ready. Anyway, we'll keep going up. Through this band there will be very little. Again, it's up to about 512. It's all UHF. All UHF signals. Until we really get to 700 megs LTE and then the cellular radio, and again you'll see those as large blocks of noise. Got some good cellular coverage. And as LTE looks like noise, you can see the bands there come clearly through. It's quite interesting. So on the whole, it's a really nice receiver. Sorry, let's go back down to VHF. I have had it running below 20 megs. I built a little converter when I was doing some tests just to see what it was like on HF, and it was very good. I was actually very surprised how good it was. I use it to monitor 70 and 40 with very little pre-selection, to be frank, and it was very good. As I say, for a little loop antenna I had here. Monitored a few of the amateurs. Lower sideband, upper sideband came in just as good as you would expect any lower sideband and upper sideband receiver to give. In fact, they actually down convert for the SSB in here down to 10.7. Nice if it was lower, but even at 10.7 you can get half decent shape factors. Obviously better to get down to 1.2 or even below a 455. But at those bands, it did perform well. So I might just take the camera off and I'll just go a quick tour on the from the vertical, what's going on inside there, just in case somebody decides to invest in one of these, never play. One thing out of shot I've got here, those are the batteries that are often found inside these. In fact, this is actually okay. I cut it out thinking it would be bad because it's starting to go a bit furry, but to be honest, I think it's not bad. I think I'll clean that up a bit, put a bit of it seems to charge well, put a bit of Vaseline on there, and I think I'll put it in there for the next year and keep an eye on it. This is a battery backup for the memory functionality of the unit. Now I'll stop here and I'll then go internal to the unit and give you a quick talk inside. Hi, we'll do a little bit of a look inside, and I just wanted to show you how the equipment's laid out. And it is a very nice layout. The main strip down the middle here is all to do with the RF strip. It starts with the front end at the back here. Antennas input, there's an antenna select 1 and 2 at the back. It then goes through some filters, a converting system, some more filtering, two more filters, 2 down converters following that, first and second mixer, and finally it goes to an IF level where from about this part forward is all to do with the IF. There's AGC, what they call the COR and AM bands here. There's a SSB filter here, but there's 2 of them, we're cascaded, one on top of the other, and this is the standard 5 bandwidths. They did do a version of this where you could put 10 bandwidths, and I suspect they used the smaller filters, and never seen one, and had 2 on each card. And here they got the FM demodulators. Now each demodulator is matched to its filter, so these have to go together as a pair all the way across. So I'll keep it short. That's the basic RF strip. To the right of that is the main processor board, the synthesizer interface, and the main receiver interface card. There is an option slot here. This is to do with, I think it's to do with the digital show on the system monitor. I haven't really figured that out yet, but I'll get getting into it. At the back we've got a byte option and the 488 option. Excuse me. To the right of all this is the main synthesizer area, and you've got the 5 or whatever it is 1 meg reference, the first VCO, and then you've got a second VCO up here, and at the very front here a 535 fixed oscillator for the first IF. So those are the areas. Over to the left here we've got the system monitor, which is fundamentally almost a plug-in unit. You can unplug it, you'd have to take the front panel off and slide the whole thing out. It comes out as a single block. And behind that is the power supply. Everything's on these plug-in leads, which always worries me. There's a few receivers that have this that WJ do, and I'm not convinced it's a great thing to do, but it just looks bulky and it looks flaky, to be honest. The only other complaint I'd have is that there's a lot of stress. Sorry about this. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of stress on these cables. They all tuck down. They pull out when you pull out the cards. So all these cards are plug in, and just a little bit difficult to work on. I would have thought there may have been a slightly better way to do it, but perhaps the cost it was prohibitive. What else can I say from the top here? Obviously the front area here is where the battery normally goes. You can see down inside there's a holder for the battery, and what normally happens is you get corrosion down into that multi-way ribbon cable, which is not good for it. So hopefully that will give you a bit of a feel for the receiver has going for it.